Hi, Brian Clemens. I'm the general manager here at Dynamax. We just got back from a owners rally in Massey's Landing in Millsboro, Delaware. With a 1,500-mile round trip, I figured this is a great opportunity to answer some questions about the M2, point out some of the advantages to the Super C chassis, and give you a rundown on the vehicle we took out there, which was the 34KD. It's a newer floor plan, and give you the opportunity to sort of look at how the cab works, some of the advantages, basically to get in it and how you would use it, some of my favorite features, and also compare and contrast it to maybe some of the other vehicles that are out there. Without further ado, we want to talk about one of the first things is how to fill up. You know, a lot of other manufacturers might have a single tank. That's what you're used to. You're used to your car that way. On an M2 commercial chassis, we've got dual 50-gallon tanks. We call them saddle tanks. You've got 50 gallons on each side. The fuel pickup on level is on the driver's side. But one of the really nice things that I'm sort of spoiled on now is when you pull into a rest area or a service plaza on a toll road or a commercial trucking center, when you pull in, they've got dual pumps. So you have the main pump and you have a satellite pump. So you pop, obviously, the cap off, you pop both tanks in, you start filling, and it is high flow fuel very quickly. The other nice thing is DEF is typically right there, so if you pull in, you stop one time, fill both tanks, fill the DEF, and off you go. With a single tank, you have to sort of fill the tank, and then you've got to go pull forward or move to get DEF. And if you're not using a commercial fuel service, then it takes a lot longer. On the last stop, I didn't need to top off, or I just needed to top off one tank, and so when I pulled in, we went to a regular, regular service facility with regular fuel tanks, and you wait forever to fill that. So I'm spoiled definitely with the commercial side of things, and you pull in right with all the truckers, and pull in and you fill and off you go. One of the other benefits to the M2 chassis is serviceability. So if you need service, in some situations where you have a rear engine or an engine that's inside, they have to go inside the living space to service it. With an M2 Super C, you don't need to do that. The engine, of course, is just out front like your car or truck would be, an SUV. You pull into a service center and they pop the hood and off they go. It's a very simple process, and all of your fluids and everything else are very easy to see just by popping the latches. There's a strut, gas assist to open the hood, and everything is visible right there without even touching anything. Let's head inside. I'll show you some of my favorite features and some of the new options for the 2020 model. So one of my favorite parts, or the first thing you notice about an M2, is how easy it is to get in and out of. In most motorhomes, you're coming in and out of the passenger door, the camp door, and you're waiting for those steps to come out. And so what's nice is when we pull into a truck stop or we pull into a gas station, I'm getting right out of my door. The steps are there all the time. It's just like your daily driver. You're getting in and out of the driver-passenger door. It makes it very convenient, very safe to get in and out, and you're not waiting for the steps to come out of the coach door. So number one, of course, is accessibility, getting in and out. The other thing is just in a seating position, I love how it sort of sits you upright. A lot of people will compare the M2 to driving a big SUV. And while that's somewhat accurate, I don't know that it's exactly appropriate or an exact comparison. I sort of put it as sitting in a comfortable dining chair. You're sort of upright, ready to go, and I never at any point during this trip got drowsy where I felt like I was dozing off. Whereas in my passenger vehicle or my SUV, it's not at 5 hours, it's not at 10 hours, it's literally at 20 minutes. I'm dozing off, or I'm, first part of a trip, I feel like, how am I going to make it the rest of the way? I never felt that way with this. I feel like you're in a more upright position. You can see everything clearly around you, and there's a few features that we offer for the 2020 model that make that even better. The other thing you have to remember is this is an M2 commercial truck chassis, so you've got commercial truck drivers putting 8 hours a day in this thing, and so it has to be comfortable, it has to be, you have to have good visibility, and it has to be easy to drive. And so one of the great things about the M2 is the drivability. A few of the things I wanted to point out were some of the new options or new features available on the 2020 chassis. One of those options that are available is the Mobilize system. That is basically a forward collision alert lane departure system. One of the things it will do is beep at you if you're outside of your lane and tell you basically to get back in. I will say what I didn't love all the time is if I'm purposely going outside of a lane for construction or to give wide berth to a truck I'm passing, it would beep at me then, but it's not consistent. It's just when you depart your normal lane. What I did find cool was as you're driving, there's some sort of sensor that scans the speed limit signs, and so it will flash the speed limit up on the display. Regardless of if there's construction and there's a sign and it changes, it will flash that. I don't know what it does. It's some sort of voodoo, but it basically puts an image of the speed limit sign on the screen, which is pretty cool. That is option for 2020 model year. The other thing that we have now is there were some complaints about the sound system in the M2, so optional on the Force and the DX3, and standard on the Dynamax XL is the JBL or the Harman Kardon sound system. Basically, that's 2 dash speakers that get replaced with JBLs. It gets you a JBL subwoofer, and it gets you a custom-tuned 4-channel amplifier. And I can tell you the audio was night and day difference compared to just the stock radio with no sub. So that is, again, optional for the Force and DX3, standard on the XL, and it was actually sounded phenomenal. There's also a lot of great settings that you can do in the Kenwood dash radio that can let you fine-tune that for your personal taste. Also available as an option for the 2020 model year is the TST tire pressure monitor system. This was actually pretty cool, and it basically tells you what each tire pressure is. You can add a trailer to it and monitor the trailer pressures if you buy extra sensors. And it also gives you the tire temperature. So I could see as we were driving and see where the temperatures are. So if you have an issue with a tire that's overheating, the pressure's too high, you'll see it right on the display. One of the really cool things I liked is when this came from the factory, we were at max air pressure, which is 110 psi. And based on my loading, I didn't need that. So it makes for a harsher ride when you're driving and you have them at max pressure you don't need to be. What's really cool about this is this pops right off on the mount. You can unhook it. It's got a battery, a rechargeable battery in it. And when you power this thing up, it's going to give me the mobile ability to see this display. So I would go around to my tires and add or reduce pressure to dial them in exactly to what I wanted. My car has the same feature, but it's built into the dash. So I have to go add some air, come back and look, or take air out and come back and look, and I wait a little bit. With this, I had it with me the entire time in my pocket, and it would just cycle through each of the tires and get the pressure exactly where I wanted. Also new for 2020 model year is the Kenwood DNX 775 RVS. This is the Kenwood unit, looks very similar to the head unit we're running now, but they've added then a built-in Garmin navigation, which is truck and RV specific. And I can tell you this thing was a lifesaver, and it works really well. What's cool about it is you can go into the nav, and when you go in here, if you go into settings, you can set up an RV profile. And this, you can name certain vehicles. So if you're towing or not towing, you can set them up separately. But right now the 34K HD is active, and if you go in there, you can do things like setting the profile. You can set the width of the vehicle, the overall length, you can set the height of the vehicle, the gross weight, the max weight per axle, the number of trailers if you're carrying any, and audible cautions and advisories. So anytime there was a sharp curve coming up, anytime there was a descent coming up, it would beep and flash a sign up on the screen to tell me that it was coming. The best part about this is it already knows what the roads are. And I can tell you from, again, it was a painful learning process. On the way to Massey's Landing, there was a wreck on Highway 1. So instead of listening to our trusty Kenwood, which is set up for RV and truck use, we wanted to look to see if there was a better route we could go that took traffic into account. And so we pulled up Google Maps, we rerouted based on the traffic, and there was a way that would save us about an hour and 15 minutes going a different way. I'm here to tell you some things are too good to be true. That routed us to a road that had a one-lane bridge on it. And so we learned the hard way, basically, that taking a detour based on traffic is not always ideal in a 36-foot RV that weighs over 25,000 pounds. So trust the GPS truck-based navigation. It will not steer you wrong. The other thing is, of course, don't be in a hurry. The difference between 65 miles per hour and 70 miles per hour is night and day. 70 through the toll roads in Ohio, straight 3 lanes most of the time, that is very, very comfortable. I've never felt like we were going too fast, we're never out of control. When you get into Pennsylvania, and there's some curvy, windy roads and lots of inclines and declines, 65 is ideal. And the thing is, the difference in a 500-mile trip between 65 and 70 is 30 minutes. And so whether it takes you 6 hours or 6 hours and 30 minutes, really the journey is half of the enjoyment. Sit back, relax, enjoy the trip. Speaking of toll roads, for those of you in Ohio, if you think you have bad roads, you should come to Indiana. And for those of you in Indiana driving the Indiana toll road, if you think your roads are bad, go to Pennsylvania. For those of you in Pennsylvania, if you think your roads are bad, you are absolutely correct. They are probably some of the worst roads that I've ever paid for. In fact, Pennsylvania should pay us to travel those roads. So anyway, take your time through PA, lots of curves, lots of hills, terrain, everything else, and sit back, relax, and enjoy the trip. So one of my favorite features for the 2020 model year is the quad view camera. Basically what this does is it gives you a hitch view, a horizon view, which is like having a rear view mirror again, the right and left turn signal or turn camera on screen at all times. Last year we had one that was triggered, so if you turned the right or left turn signal on, that view would come up, and if you were in reverse, that view would come up, and while driving you can keep it on your tow vehicle with a single view. The complaint from some customers were that the delay from the turn signal to the camera coming up for the right or left was too long. And after putting some miles on the 30FW last year, I had to agree. And so for this year, we set out to eliminate those triggers. Now you have the display up full time. And I thought, well, you know what, it'd be a great idea when you get in reverse, you'll have the full screen reverse. And I can tell you, after doing it one time, the very first thing was I disabled that trigger. I got so used to seeing all 4 cameras at once that I no longer wanted full screen. And it's really easy to do that. It's just a setting, and after going, I have a sort of windy road, or my driveway winds a couple of places, and so backing up I felt like I was blind. Even though I had a 10-inch screen showing me the back side, I missed having the right and left and the hitch view. So one of the things you can do is very easily set that to display 4 screens at once. Now, once we shipped the first quad camera out, I had a complaint right off the bat. They liked having it in the radio. They didn't like having the separate screen. They liked when you turn the turn signal on that that the camera switched over. And so I was second guessing the decision to do the quad camera until I was on this trip. And I can tell you, after putting 1,500 miles on, I have no hesitation whatsoever. This is absolutely the way it should be. Other manufacturers, again, how everyone else does it, is you turn the right and left turn signal on, that camera comes on, and then when you're gone, it's off. But I can tell you, if you look on most commercial trucks, they're going to have a mirror out front, way up by the front hood. And they have that so that they can keep their eyes on the road, and they can also watch the vehicle that might be in their blind spot. This quad camera does the exact same thing and then some. When you're sitting in the driver's seat, if you want to look at your side mirrors, which I can tell you, they give you a wealth of information. They're huge mirrors, you can see a ton. However, you have to turn your head to see them. The nice thing about the quad view camera is as I'm driving down the road, I never have to turn my head to see that view. I can basically just glance over with my eyes and I can see the hitch view, the horizon view, which is basically a longer view, sort of like a rear view mirror. I can see my left turn signal and my right turn signal at all times. So I know if there's someone coming up on my right-hand side trying to pass. I know if someone's in my blind spot without having to turn my head to see. And I know before I ever turn my turn signal on that the lane is clear. If someone's in your blind spot and you turn the turn signal on in a rig this big to see if anyone is there, you've just basically given that person a coronary because they think you're coming over. The nice thing about this is my signal comes on when I know it's clear, and not when I have to see if it's clear. One of the great things about the M2 chassis is just how much information is at your fingertips, or I should say, I guess, eye tips. I don't know, but there's so much going on. Sometimes the first 15 minutes can be a little overwhelming. You've got tire pressure monitor system, optional for 2020. You've got the navigation going. You've got the quad camera. You've got mirrors. You've got the dash display. But after about 15-20 minutes of driving this, you know where everything is, and you never have to go very far to get it. And really, my favorite part of the M2 chassis is the horn. As kids, I think we all went down the road telling truckers to blow the horn, and now we can do that. And if someone cuts you off or doesn't give you enough room to stop, it's always nice to give them a subtle reminder that maybe next time they shouldn't do that. The other nice thing about the M2 chassis, of course, is air ride seats. Air ride seats. So you can air the seats up, and it gives you a lot more travel. It's way more comfortable. And I can tell you, if ever I got tired of sitting in a position, there's a lumbar here you can use. You can adjust the air ride, change the tilt a little bit. But for the most part, I left the seat right where it was and just drove. And then once you get in a groove, I mean, you can put hours and hours on. The other great thing is this windshield. They've been producing this windshield, I believe, since 2004. So replacements are super easy to get, and they are super cost effective. Some manufacturers might do windshields and maybe they only built them for a year or 2 years, or maybe there's a vehicle out there that's no longer in production. You can't even get that windshield. But the glass alone will cost you upwards of 4 or 5 times what this glass will cost you, and the lead times are going to be really long, assuming it's shipped to the final destination intact. This windshield is stocked at almost every truck facility. Super easy to get and super easy to install. That's the beautiful thing about the M2 chassis. You can have it serviced at any truck facility. They don't have to come to the living room to get to it. They pull up the engine. It's just like everything else they worked on. They're not trying to learn how to get to the engine. The other nice thing is because you do have the engine out in front of you, these vehicles are all crash tested. So in the unfortunate event you are in some sort of collision, that engine is designed to crumple. There's 5 foot of crash zone, so that engine is designed to drop down and underneath. And so it's extremely safe. There's so many more things we can talk about on the M2 chassis. Just the drivability, the serviceability, the accessibility, all of those things are outstanding. But we just want to give you a quick overview of the M2, get you familiar with it if you haven't seen one in the wild or haven't had a chance to test drive one. But I encourage you, put some miles under one. It just shouldn't be a quick trip, 2 mile, whatever. Have the dealer give you the unit and let you take it for 30, 40 minutes, maybe an hour even, so that you can really get a feel for how everything works. Stay tuned. The next video we'll do a full walkthrough of the 34 KD that we took on the trip. Talk about the pros, some things that I think I would like to see changed. Speaking of which, on the M2 cab, they give us an ashtray, which really serves no purpose. So one thing I've tasked my guys with doing is developing some sort of cubby here so that you have more than just one cup holder. That way, if there's a place you can put your phone or whatever it may be, it's right there. As soon as we get that available, it just would attach with the same screws that the ashtray goes on. As soon as that's available, we'll make it available in our parts department, and it's something you can add to any M2 going back several years. So until then, we'll see you. Drive safe and enjoy the trip.